So it's the first time we have to change it, to face it. So, with much further ado, I will ask President Fabius to give us his concluding thoughts on this conference.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. But after what you have just said, the best for me to go directly without speaking. Well, I will not conclude in that sense that it would be ridiculous for me to try and summarize what has been said, and I have no title for that. And everybody who has been here is in perfect position to conclude by himself. Therefore, I would do a bit differently. I tried to select 2 or 3 words which for me are the main words, and the words that personally I would draw from these 2 days, very pleasant and interesting days that we spent together. The first word is congratulations. Because it was a very difficult challenge. First, to gather very high-level participants, and they are there. To deal with a very complex topic. To organize everything in a perfect way, and each of us who has tried to organize such events knows how it is difficult, and it was a splendid achievement. And all that, which is maybe still more difficult, in a very friendly atmosphere. And I think that there is no contradiction between science and friendly atmosphere. Therefore, really, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. President, you, Mr. Director General, and because we are both on the same panel, my friend Commissioner, my friend Jeffrey, and all of you, and maybe we could, because he is representative of everybody, we could applaud the President for this magnificent achievement. Obviously, it would not have been possible without the strong support of the Cyprus itself, and I would like to convey our best thanks to the President, the government, to Europe, and to all those who have made it possible. Really, it was a brilliant, very brilliant work. Congratulations. Second, science. Science. Because here we are in a research institute. And when you are dealing with climate change, and I prefer, but sometimes I forget, to use the word climate disruption, because it's what it is about. But it's such a complex subject that in order to be understood and to be active and to act in a proper way, science is quite decisive. In my introductory remarks, when was it? Yesterday? I've said, and it's very true, that the Paris success would not have been possible without the magnificent work of the scientists. And it is still the same today. You have organized our today's session in such a way that we have covered nearly all the topics related with climate disruption. Economic topics, social topics, the question of water, the question of tourism, the question of education this afternoon, the question of agriculture, and so on and so forth. And it was very interesting because it was based on research and facts and data, not on news and not on fake news. And it's an absolute necessity because when we are looking at the work which is still to be done, we have to base everything on real science. And obviously it is what is done here and what has been done during these 2 days. And this tribute that I pay to science and research, and therefore to scientists and researchers, we have to bear it in mind if we want to be good actors for the future. Science. The third word is cooperation, and speaking about Cyprus and this institute, hotspot. Hotspot. I don't know how many times this word has been heard, but many times, and it makes sense. Cooperation. It is true that when we are facing the immensity of the challenge which is posed by climate disruption and the necessity to tackle it, and when we are looking at the very specific position of this region, it would be really a catastrophe not to act in a cooperative way. I think during these 2 days we have better understood what was the specificity of this region and what could be brought by the scientific work of this institute, and complemented by what my friend Jeffrey called his humble proposal. You have a particular conception of humility or humbleness, I don't know. But it was magnificent, Jeffrey. Suddenly, we understand that cooperation is not only cooperation in research, absolute necessity, cooperation in action. I don't know what will be the title of the future Jeffrey Sachs plan or Cyrus Institute plan or Gutierrez plan, I don't know. But anyway, I have to tell you personally, Jeffrey, that I found it tremendously interesting and, as always with you, both very intelligent and very practical, because both of these qualities are necessary. Therefore, gratitude, science, cooperation, and the fact embodied by the proposals, particularly of Jeffrey Sachs, that we need not only to describe the problems, but to propose solutions, and urgent solutions. Now come my final comments, which are personal, drawn from my own experience. The first one is that if we want to act in a positive and fruitful way, it's a new sort of diplomacy. There's only one thing on which I don't agree with you, Jeffrey, for obvious reasons, is when you've said that some people have signed the Paris Agreement because they did not understand what was in it. I could agree that some of them were not so enthusiastic. Yeah. But precisely it meant that they had understood. And in fact, after the success of the Paris Agreement, I tried to understand why. Because why this success? Because honestly, on the spot, it was not clear for me. I know that it's better not to understand why you get a success than to understand why you have a failure. But anyway, which is a French habit. But not only French. But I think one of the reasons is that it was a sort of new kind of diplomacy. If I compare, and forgive me for the comparison, the most famous agreement at the beginning of the 19th century, the Congrès de Vienne, after the defeat of Napoleon, and exactly 2 centuries after, Paris Agreement. The differences are obvious. In Vienna, there were, I don't know, 5 or 6. They were in the same palace during months. Everything was secret. There were only the representatives of the states, and they were discussing about exchanging territories. In Paris, we were 30,000. Nothing was secret. And it was not only the states, but also all the stakeholders were there. And with reasonable preparation and effort in organization, we've made it. And I think new diplomacy probably is more that sort of model, which means that to implement what you have in mind, Jeffrey, obviously the governments are essential because at the end of the day, they vote yes or no. But we need to insist on parliaments. We need to have with us the NGOs, to have with us the companies, to have with us the scientific community. This community has to be independent, but independent doesn't mean to be out of the world. We have to have with us civil society. And I think what was true for Paris is true for, I would say, your plan. Anyway, for the new actions we have to implement. That's my first final comment. And the second one, I remember a chat I had with Michael Bloomberg before, it was probably 2 years ago. And we were discussing about what are the mistakes to avoid and what are the ways to follow. And I think, I don't know if he said that or I said that, but anyway, things that I will explain now, I think they are still true. Obviously, the climate disruption problem is a long-term problem. Obviously, the negative effects of climate change today are awful, and much more awful than is generally thought or said. And the new figures, which will be published in the coming months, will be, well, you can qualify them, but anyway, very negative. But if we want to have the people with us, and it is both through people, that we can have the government with us, we have not only to be long-term and negative, but also to be short-term and positive. Short-term because it is absolute necessity. It's a matter of urgency. And positive because if you explain to ordinary people in the street that the problem will come in 50 years and that anyway there is nothing to do, okay, it will be back in one's home, it will light the TV on, and okay. Therefore, let's not forget that it is a very long-term issue, that to a certain extent it's a tragedy, but let's also explain that if we tackle in the right way this problem, it can be and it will be positive and terribly positive for the population, and that it is urgent. I have finished remembering that according to the famous sentence, it is not because things are difficult that we don't do them, it is because we do them that they are difficult. Thank you. Please. Come on.
All of us. Okay. It's okay.